So in terms of sponsorships, I'll just go through a mock-up. One thing about our platform, by the way, so we have a whole virtual event venue, and I'm happy to skim through that a little bit. But Event Hub at its core, pre-COVID, pre-virtual, was a sponsorship platform with the idea to bring brands that are going after general audiences, public audiences together, and to introduce them to the right events so that events are finding the right partners and getting more opportunities to be more selective about the partners. And those partners are able to really search and discover the right events to partner with. So our homepage looks a lot like Airbnb, except it's for booth and sponsorship opportunities at live and virtual events all across the country. And each event gets this showcase page here, if you can see my screen, where essentially you have a photo gallery at the top. You're able to list all of your attendee demographics. And these don't have to be, as I mentioned yesterday, third-party audited. These are general ballparks. The idea is just to give brands an idea of what you're doing. But you want to back that up with multimedia that shows your audience and shows that you know you can put your money where your mouth is and you have a general idea for it. And then sponsor logos below. And then what each of our pages do is essentially what this is at its core is it's a mobile-friendly one-page media kit, but it has CTAs built in that funnel directly into digital applications for sponsorship. So whereas your sponsorship expertise is typically spent much more on the 10K, 15 or 20K and up sponsorships, our platform is designed for you to manage all those very efficiently, but also to make it scalable and manageable to take all the 10K and under sponsorships and to negotiate those in-kind deals and things like that. That take just usually it's a huge time suck, and often it's almost like, was it worth it for the amount of time I spent going back and forth for this $500 or $1,000 thing? So our platform streamlines all that. And on the management side, it's just digital applications, payments, paperwork, logistics. It's all soup to nuts, just easy tools that's all built in. Why I wanted to bring up this page first was that there's a couple different items here. So I'm going to actually jump to a different page. So this is an actual customer of ours. This is the Bank of America Chicago Marathon, also produces Bank of America Shamrock Shuffle. And you can see that different people will use these pages in different ways, but ultimately this is going to be an entirely virtual show. They offer a sponsor inclusion, which is more of a management side, but here you go. They offer a $500 virtual booth and a $400 expo booth. So one of the other things I'm going to dabble with a bit during this talk is a SWOT analysis. And I think it's worth discussing, especially this year, because there's so much change in flux. What are the potential strengths, weaknesses of virtual and hybrid film festivals versus traditional ones? And then what are the opportunities outside of your internal org and the threats to your external org? And how are you, or externally, and how are you capitalizing on the opportunities and strengths? How are you going to overcome and mitigate the weaknesses? So these are my thoughts on it initially, and I'd love to also just have a kind of a group discussion on this if you're open to it, in terms of this will all inform essentially how you're going to set up your sponsor things, how you're going to set up your clauses, your cancellations, or your full virtual pivots and things like that. Something that hit tons of our festivals really hard last year was all of these, when their live event canceled, it was sponsors wanted a refund, right? And then with this year, with the forward thinking of, there's a lot of uncertainty in the market and we don't know how fast the vaccine rollout is going to be effective to allow certain capacities for hybrid events. How can we build terms into a contract so that we're not getting a placeholder or a letter of interest, but we're actually getting a signed contract and a deposit that sponsor is comfortable with pivoting to a fully virtual activation, whether it's a partial refund or whether it's an extra surprise and delight one-off thing that you're reaching your audience with on their behalf, or whatever it is. Some of those are great concepts to be able to get those deals signed now and get the money in the door so that you're not getting this, oh, get back to us 2 weeks before your fest and let's see where COVID is at. It's like, no, we have a scarcity of opportunities available and a scarcity of bandwidth to work with partners. If you want in, here's the deal. Let's figure out the deposit up front to guarantee your spot. And then if we have to pivot to fully virtual, XYZ happens for you. We already have it well laid and thought out. Just having that thought out and written down in a plan and being able to offer that with your contracts will increase your sign rate and increase your cash deposit rate from your sponsors. So that was me kind of jumping into a threat right in the bottom, right? How do you overcome pandemic or inclement weather threat if it's an outside festival? Most of them are indoors. But those types of things can all be used to help you make deals happen and not stall, which is the killer, right? Sponsorship teams, the killer is stalling because when it covers a good amount of your budget, it's so hard to overcome it when you don't have that cash flow, and all of a sudden you're supposed to be dropping deposits for maybe keynote speakers and paying for different facilities and venue deposits and things like that, paying for AV companies to virtually produce your stuff, and you don't have that money, and it's really tough. So those are some ways that we've seen people be very successful. COVID clauses, and we could definitely talk more about that. But has anyone implemented those, or is that a good idea, and is it worth talking about a little bit more, or should we move on to some other stuff?
I'll just say that we did go back to the drawing board really quickly and have our legal team rewrite our force majeure clauses, beef them up last year as COVID broke out. Just interesting anecdote where we were a little bit like nervous about representing those to people we were already in talks with. 100% what we got back is that us introducing that increased their confidence level with our ability to produce the event. So they were super receptive to signing on board with those beefed up force majeure clauses.
And that was because you were proactive and had a plan in place, and it was clear that you were thinking through it for them and had the contingencies in place, correct? That's a great way to handle it. Yep. And if you need that, there's a ton of free example COVID clauses online. I have a few from some insurance companies actually that I can also potentially share after this. So let me know if you need advice or to be connected to resources. Typically though, what you're going to want to do is to really, even if it's a couple $100 for a consult, is you're going to want to go state by state and contact a state entertainment attorney, because a lot of these laws and regulations are enforceable on a state basis. Going back to the SWOT, and the other thing is I do have a bunch of different example sponsor decks that I want to share, not just on our platform, but outside of it. Interest from the group. Should we dive back into the SWOT analysis a little bit, or do you want to jump and see some other potential sponsorship kits from some festivals, from fairs, things like that, and sporting events?
I like to see some other ones. I mean,
sure.
Obviously the advantages and disadvantages are apparent.
Okay, so whoop, no, I'm sharing the wrong stuff. Where is my screen? Advantages, disadvantages of the SWOT stuff, or on the decks, right? The sponsor decks and pick through them. I think that makes sense to me. Okay, so here is this is a good one. So if you're an LA fan at all, or a SoCal person, you've heard of the Temecula Balloon and Wine Festival. This is interesting because it's a semi-food and wine fest, semi-niche entertainment fest with hot air balloons. And so normally they have detailed packages. They're still waiting to see if they're going to be able to do any kind of in-person, because it's SoCal or particularly hard hit, or virtual, which is why this isn't popular. But I wanted to show on this, they do probably the best job of not only laying out detailed attendee demographics and including marketing spend. So marketing statistics, including how much you spend on PPC, is all stuff that sponsors like to see in a deck. And their photos are good in terms of showing those demographics for proof of demographics that I was talking about. You can see two things here. One, it's a packed event. Two, it's hitting the demographics right on the head. And this is just showing some other, yeah, go ahead.
I just want to raise a question, curious to anybody here. We are in the process of updating our deck materials right now, and we are very mindful that crowding, normally what we'd want to do is show these massive crowd shots, and we are being very mindful to not lean on those this year because they make people skittish.
And that's really tough, because then people are going to say, well, how many people are coming? What you might do, and I would recommend doing, is go online, find some great images of events, like specifically, this is a niche thing. Farmers markets have in most states been able to continue operating under very restricted, spaced out guidelines. Find some images from a local farmers market that's done a really good job of doing that as far as the crowd control and the spacing out, and then put those as concept photos into your deck, so that you show both, we're going to have a lot of people, but we're going to do it safely. And it's a really fine line to walk and thread the needle. What I also love about these people is the FOMO they create. So having just a previous sponsors or participating sponsors deck to create FOMO included in your materials is huge. And you can see they really did a nice job of that. They thought about laying out the biggest national names first, and then down into the regional stuff. So how you order those and place those in terms of priority. If you're looking for national sponsors, even if it's a local dealership, throw the Toyota brand in there. No one needs to know that, right? When you're selling. As far as Abbott, big medical group, they're working with the local office. So these are things that you can do to really help give you that national presence. And it just looks like they are killing it on sponsorships. And you have no idea if these are in kind or whatever, but the logos give them so much clout and credibility. So that's one thing that they did. What I wanted to show, I'm going to go off and pull off a couple PDFs of just totally separate sponsor decks, and they're very different. So this is a county fair that I'm going to pull up. And you might say that has nothing to do with mine because they're selling an expo, but I think you'll be interested in the amount of similarities and the ideas that this can produce for you. So first of all, they spent a lot of time, and I think they actually had a marketing agency help them design this, but this is not rocket science stuff. This is stuff you could produce in Canva or PowerPoint or something like that pretty easily yourself. So you don't need to have, with today's tools, and there's all these templates. One of the things I did actually when I was making a professional deck for my company, I was like, well, I could hire a designer for $5,000, or I could go online and go to Envato or some kind of marketplace and find a really nice template and just skin it and tweak it the way I wanted it. And I did that for $30 and saved myself a $5,000 quote to custom produce something that would have then cost more money every time I wanted to go back and change anything. So templates are awesome. If you're looking for different templates online, there's tons of different Googleable marketplaces and options to give you that. What I like about this is, first of all, imagery right on the main thing, and clearly what it is. This is a sponsorship package. Vague names don't help anyone, right? Really hit it on the head. They have an intro paragraph about what the event's about and some key hit points. The biggest thing for sponsors is typically how many attendees or how many impressions can I expect? Right there hits you on the head with it, alongside some really solid multimedia that shows you a packed crowd and some A-list talent, for example. And then they say why. They give you the whys, but right on that why is actually their sponsor tiers right off the bat. So hit them early with your sponsorship tiers is what I would say. These are location-based. So for you, if you're on-site, obviously, you really just have a lounge, if you will, for the cinema. But virtual, you have a ton of options to break this out. It could be presenting title sponsor. You could have featured main page placement, or you could have ancillary virtual sponsor village placement, things like that. What they do beyond this is they then break it down and get into more detail. But this is the other key page I wanted to look at. Their sponsorships. Is that easier to see? Is that clear for everyone on everyone's screen? So what's really nice about this is they clearly break out the tiers and which perk packages come with this. And this is something I want to talk about because IEG sponsorships.com has long said, don't tell anyone your sponsorship pricing and packages, always go for the max deal. Here's why that doesn't work anymore, because I can link in anyone else that you show a sponsor logo of and find that brand or event manager and ask them how much they paid, and they're going to tell me as a peer. So it's better to be transparent with this, and then you can custom negotiate up or down depending on what people are doing. And it also gives you credibility in terms of when those people talk, they say, well, I just got quoted 10,000 more for the same thing. You don't get caught in a bad place where then there's this because that there's a general school mentality is like, I'm a sponsorship salesperson, I'm going to expert sell this person the moon. And then this other person's a little more savvy, they know better. So what I would say is transparency, and then just clearly laying out your perk package will drive you to much more sales and save a lot of needless back and forth where people are coming to you and saying, hey, I want X, Y, and Z, can you do this too? And then you can come in and say, yes, we can do this. By the way, have you thought about this integrated thing we can do for this? And then they go, oh my God, that's a great idea, add that in. Comparative thing, we were talking with a customer about potentially doing this custom event, and I gave them the option and said, if you wanted to do this, you could do this. It's going to be a build for 15,000. Sure, we can do that. Equivalent to a sponsorship perk that might be something with an MC placement and an interview sponsor with a filmmaker or something like that. They went, oh yeah, add that in too. We might want to do that. So you never know if you don't ask, and have some other ideas that are surprise and delight perks to offer in those conversations, but anchor it within this base set package, I guess is what I'm saying with that. Thoughts on this? Can you see this correlating pretty well? It's a fairly thought through and well laid out deck. Then they go into other details like that. And then these get into really, that was their quick highlights list, right? And then there's, oh boy, all different kinds of packages. This I actually don't like. I think this is a bit too confusing, and there's too many. There's almost a thing that's information overload. So you have to be careful when you're making sponsor decks to not give too many options. so that you, because like ultimately I could list every combo of perk packages and have 300 different packages, but who's going to actually digest that? It's a waste of your time to spend time and money spinning that up versus having some core packages that you can customize from. So anchor it and then tweak it to everyone's specific needs. I guess is my takeaway there. Was that helpful? Would you like to see one more?
I have a question.
Yeah.
On the surprise and delight, is that kind of like an a la carte list of benefits that you can offer a sponsor? And if so, do you price those out, whether you publish the price or just have it kind of in-house? Because I think we're always trying to balance really customizing a sponsorship to get right to what our sponsor wants, but also being fair and transparent that we're not, you know, as you said, so we're not giving company A something that we're not giving company B and all of that.
Yeah, there's two ways to look at, so there's two different surprise and delights that I've talked about, and I want to clarify on those. One type of surprise and delight is when you're offering it as a perk where you're surprising and delighting your attendees and audience with some offer or a giveaway or engagement with that sponsor. That's attendee facing. What I was actually talking about when I just walked through this is having in your back pocket some cool ideas for really unique perks. So if you have a call with a major national brand, brainstorm a creative way that would be really unique and innovative for how they could partner and integrate and add value and really incorporate into your event programming. Surprise and delight with that creative idea. And then that's a whole custom pricing thing, because that's really just creative license to design that together. And then at that point, you're a partner with them in their activation and not just them coming in and telling you what they want. So that's what I mean by that. But absolutely, I would keep that type of pricing internally for what you think it's worth in terms of value. The other thing I would do is think about the perks that might be super valuable or desirable to sponsors that really cost you almost nothing if you need things to sweeten the deal as a throw-in to close the deal, like an additional perk or something like that. Could be, great example of that is dedicated social media blast, right? It takes your social media person 5 seconds to schedule out with their logo. Or if you're using our virtual platform, it's like you can do either a paid center announcement that directs directly to their virtual sponsor booth, or you could do a slide-in notification that says, hey, giveaway happening now, check it out. So little things like that cost you almost nothing in terms of production time, but feel like a really nice get for them and feel like you're giving them something if they have that negotiating mindset, or easy ways to close it and still get your asking price. Did that answer your question?
Yes, thank you.
Sure. So I guess what I'm saying is take that attendee surprise and delight thing that we've probably all heard about and think about how you would surprise and delight a sponsor with a cool ask that they didn't even think of. One of the best ways to do that as well is if you did a great activation with a big sponsorship in the past, show them an image of that and say, now imagine if this did X, Y, and Z. And then you start getting them competitive and really wanting to one up essentially. Like the best sponsor sales I've heard of in case studies are always one-ups, where a bank came in and was like, well, we're taking over as the bank this year. And we want to beat them by 3x with what we're doing. So how do we do that? And then you come up with a really creative way that gets them so excited about it that all of a sudden it's a whole thing where you feel like you're on the same team and you're not negotiating against them. So that's how some of the surprise and delight and the competitive stuff plays together that I've seen that works really well. I'm going to show one more sponsor packet here. Okay. This is not my favorite, which is, I think there's, so you'll notice a couple things. This is okay. This is done on Microsoft Word, right? You can tell it's a pretty basic Word layout with some columns. It's a nonprofit, so you got to give them a little bit of leeway for that. And this is Bay Area, so if you know them, please don't tell them I'm using their example. We work with Eat Drink SF and SF Marathon in your neck of the woods too. So we're friends. Oh, and Oakland Pride actually, and Santa Barbara. Santa Barbara? Yeah, which is the one? Jake, help me out. You still on the call? Sonoma Pride.
Sonoma
I think.
County Bank?
Yeah,
Yes,
Sonoma County
Sonoma
Pride.
Yes.
So we work with all kinds of Bay Area people. Okay. Does anyone know what I don't like about this one?
It's wordy.
So wordy. And
Can't compare. You have to read it all.
It's word vomit. And there's too much detail without any image to actually resonate and bring home what they're talking about. And the biggest thing I can't emphasize enough And I've had to fight. I've used to produce a charity yoga fest, and I always tried to fight with the executive director on this. Is she wanted like a page and a half of mission statement before talking about anything with the actual sponsors or attendee assets or anything. And at the end of the day, the way I like to explain it is corporate, and I've heard this time and time again from different sponsor experts, because I'm a nerd for going to all of our association shows and listening to every sponsor expert session. Corporations have like a 2% budget allocation to donations, right, and charity, and they have a 30% marketing budget. So if you're trying to sell them on a bigger deal, are you going to really push forward on the nonprofit aspects and the mission, or are you going to push forward on, we produce a great product with these attendees and these demographics, and if you want to engage our audience and have the privilege of that, this is what it costs, right? One of them may go, oh yeah, we have the budget, whatever. Oh, it's 10,000, great. The other one may go, oh, $1,000 donation, we'll have to get that into this big approval process and then send it to a committee and things like that. So definitely lean more into your festival as a marketable asset for them, and use your branding brain versus your, you know, like I like to think of it as, we find the right sponsor partners that want to reach our audience, that add value to our events, and then we use that to do the great community work and put on the great product for our attendees. And that's the way I justify it in my brain, because it is hard. It's like, well, I don't want to feel like I'm selling my soul. If you choose the right partners and you do the sponsorship outreach the right way, you'll have the choices to choose the right partners that feel like they understand your mission, while at the same time, they're coming in and paying a lot more money because they want the value that you're bringing in terms of reaching your audience. And I mentioned this yesterday, film festivals don't lean hard enough into the fact that in theory, they have future A-listers, movie stars that are in their films and things like that, that are at the festival, that are on panels, that can be engaging and seeing these sponsors and growing affinity for these brands that they're later going to have touting their brands. So that's a great asset when you're talking about this. That's almost like an intangible asset that one-ups film festivals over a comparable festival of the same size or features. Yeah, there's sponsorship levels. Whew, that's a lot of perks to list. There's no image of what an art editorial looks like, for example. A lot of words, a little bit of show. So, and it's all that. This is all, right? So those are a couple different examples.
I have a question.
Yes.
Okay, so I noticed you had the drop-down menu on your site for each event or film festival. And so in that drop-down menu that you showed yesterday and today, you had like virtual packages. So are you seeing that people that are using your site, are they listing like your regular deck sponsorship levels, or are they creating a different type of virtual sponsor?
Great question. They are adding so if you're fully virtual, you're going to have to redo your sponsor packages. You just are. If you're hybrid, you're still going to have to redo them if you're looking at any kind of diminished live audience, because they're just going to compare you apples to apples otherwise with your live versus live, and you really want to retool it as, this is our experience this year. It's a hybrid or it's a virtual thing. So I would recommend doing them from scratch and kind of working from the ground up. It's worth the work on the front end to establish specific tiers and create this value set for the different virtual packages you're doing. So for example, when I'm looking at virtual sponsorships, a lot of folks are having trouble wrapping their heads around what you can offer, some different placements and things like that. So right off the bat, a couple things. Video, right? If you're doing any kind of an MC stage and live programming at the beginning, maybe a kickoff announcement, you can thread that in with either a live sponsor message, or you can thread that in with commercials if it's a pre-recorded thing. Commercials are a great way to do it. And these are perk packages that would go into an overall deal. You can see there's room for a presenting sponsor in most platforms, I believe. But we have this room for a presented by sponsor, and then rotating banner ads right here. And we also have the ability to do side banner ads. If I wanted to, I could add a side banner ad into this box, which would push it slightly to the left. And then that would be a rotating banner ad over the live chat box, essentially. That can be collapsible. And then within this, we have multiple tiers for placement, right? So right at the top, all of your featured sponsors, which is usually included in a sponsor package versus a virtual vendor village or sponsor village. Yeah, so I break it into event. Is it okay if I use the term vendor versus sponsor? That's more of a music or sporting thing, but exhibitor or vendor Not something that most film fests have at a live show, but it's certainly something you can entertain full virtual vendor villages at a virtual show. And then when we go into it, so there's featured, there's also what we call pinned placement as a second tier, and then there's just everybody else. Still browsable by category, searchable by keyword search at the top. Yep. Let me see if I spell Nikon right, maybe. Come right in here. And then within that, it's really on you. And this is where it's kind of cool because you can actually partner with them much easier in terms of collaborating how to optimize, and they feel like you're coaching them to get the best value out of your event when it comes to coaching them on how to build out a virtual booth. And there's a lot of flexibility within these booths to do some really cool things, like they can embed iframes with playlists and videos. They could do even contest entry forums, prize wheels. We've had everything in between as far as this. People will do silent auctions as well, by the way. So you can embed iframes to a silent auction bidding if you're a nonprofit festival. All of that's capable with here. And every booth has a CTA built in right for them. The other thing that we do that's interesting that I also recommend is if your platform has some type of announcements, that's another perk. So we have these takeover center screen announcements that would happen in between your main programming, and you can direct someone directly to a booth or a third-party link, or we have these little slide-in notifications. And those are stackable. So if you have multiple little perks for different exhibitors during the Vendor Village virtual session, you could have those stackable for multiple sponsors. So different things like that are all monetizable, and they're all things that you can use to upsell. So if I'm talking to a bigger sponsor, I said, yeah, we can include this one, but for $1,000, we'll give you one of these dedicated every day. That's really nice with an image that links to your booth or a special, your third party, whatever your main site is or something like that. And get them really excited about it. The other thing that I've seen that's really good for virtual sponsorships is to have an interview. So if you have a branded interview with a filmmaker or something like that, and it's as simple as sending them a virtual background that you ask that filmmaker to put up behind them when they're doing the interview, or your MC does it if they're not willing, the filmmaker's not open to signing on for that. You can do virtual step and repeats, and they're a heck of a lot more effective than the usual 10 by 20 step and repeat that's at most things just kind of off in the corner. As far as people getting to use it, loving it, they'll take selfies with themselves in it and all that kind of stuff if you share some virtual backgrounds and have those branded, right? Your festival and then your key sponsors can be in your official virtual background, for example. Theater Film Fest is a perk package I would add in. So those are just a couple ideas of how I would frame virtual. In terms of pricing virtual, I see that we're at $12.45 and I want to make it more discussion for the rest, if that's okay. But in terms of pricing it, it's not something you need to give away for free. It's something that your sponsors, if they were going to be any kind of on-site, they're saving a ton of flying, hotel, they're saving hiring staff and coming in a day before to set everything up. So they have the money and budget to allocate to this because they're not using it on the back end production fees like they normally would. And even if it was printed assets, right? Where they're shifting from live printed assets and things like that, it's now all digital, which is generally a lot cheaper, just more on the graphical design side. So there's opportunities to charge them. You don't have to give anything away, certainly. And I would say that we've seen for virtual vendor booths, anything from $200 up to New York Marathon was charging $1,500 and up just for a regular standard vendor booth. Sponsor perks, we've seen small nonprofit festivals like what's called The Race in Atlanta, which is a small marathon that's nonprofit run. They're making $5,000, $10,000 for sponsors. And it's a smaller group. So certainly the money's out there for virtual if it's positioned in the right way. Love to hear feedback and thoughts. If I'm on the mark, if I'm, you want to caveat some of the things that I've said, I'd love to hear your input.
Definitely agree with the changing your sponsorship deck and things based on the virtual. I know we talked a little bit yesterday about like the virtual booths and just what their importance are. And even as I'm listening to you, just trying to understand how to make those make sense to just our normal sponsors also. They may have information, they may have businesses that they want to offer to the community. And so having those virtual booths would allow them to do that as well. I love the idea of the different types of banners just in different places, even the pop-ups that, can happen throughout, because you can still charge for those things, and those are still more opportunities for their brand to be seen. And then, of course, the virtual background, which I'm interested in learning a little more about. I was looking some stuff through Google also, just with trying to figure out how to set something up so that everyone could have that same background. I saw some people doing like photo booths and things like that, that their audience could be included in. And so just understanding how to set that up so that it's interactive for everyone.
There's some cool second screen technologies too, where you can take a barcode with your phone. It'll take you to a selfie screen with a virtual background with your logo, and it can even stamp the logo on the front, so it's not in the back. You don't have to worry about it getting covered. So there's a lot of pretty affordable AR, VR types of plugins that you can apply virtually to make people feel like they're normally at it. Because you're right, one of the exciting things is that little step and repeat in the quarter that cost me $200. Every single person that's in the industry or actor of some kind wants to go get their selfie, and they take 20 selfies in front of it and post it. And that's all amplification for you. So things that you can do with those backgrounds and, post your favorite virtual selfie, whoever has the best one, upvote them, they're going to win a prize. You'll see the amplification of your event just go through the roof with stuff like that. And it costs you almost nothing. I mean, this background, I downloaded a Google Virtual Office, and then I just plugged our logo into the top corner from Canva and hit download. It took me 5 minutes, right? And I've already had 3 people say, "Oh, you're back in the office? Whoa, where's your space?" Yeah, it's right in my my home office. So it adds a nice professional layer to your fest too. In terms of this, was that helpful in terms of framing stuff for this year? I think that, overall, I think that people too easily throw in the towel with virtual and say, oh, well, people don't value it. It's just about the storytelling. If you can storytell a compelling thing, hey, our audience is going to be more national than ever before. We're going to be able to get more people in because we're not constricted with space, and you're able to tell your story in a way that's from a position of strength, that's when you get the dollars. When people go, well, we're going to try our best, we're not sure what's going to happen, we don't have it's all about coming forward and presenting yourself like you have your ducks in a row and you know the game plan and you know how to execute, and you'll see the sponsors just really buy into that and jump on.
We did have our festival last year, and we did online, and we went with Cinescend, but we did also do the drive-in, and we had in the park experience where people brought their lawn chairs. So we have some great photos of that. But we adjusted, we were able to, because it was in October. But we see that virtual is the way to go. And that we have, we're going to do both. Even if next October we can be in person. And so we need to figure out how to do sponsorship better virtually. And so that's why I've been attending these meetings, just to see how that all works. And thank you so much.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for coming. With the drive-ins, a couple people mentioned those. I love product drops. So you can socially distance safely at a car and just have a gift bag. You could even have it, people getting handed it. That's like a sealed gift bag box when they come in by someone that's in a face shield and has gloves.
We did
but
that.
You did that. Great. And that was a big hit.
It was a big hit. We did food baskets because for our VIP event, because they are used to go. These are our top donors.
Yep.
And they're year-long members. So we did like a whole appetizer basket with a bottle of champagne and all that.
That's awesome. And it was all sponsored. It's just product drops for them. They're paying you to drop their products. And by the way, your attendees feel awesome because they're getting all this cool stuff when they come in.
Mm-hmm.
Great point. Well, cool. I always like to end a few minutes early. I know. Any final questions? Otherwise, I would love to, if it's okay, reach out for some one-on-one chats and just learn more about your orgs. Any other feedback, I'm happy to hear it, and I'm happy to share these. If you'd like to see these sponsor decks just for reference, I'm happy to also post them up as examples you can pull from.
I'll just make a quick comment going off of Angelina with the baskets that you guys did are great. We didn't do any drive-in or anything, but we did send gift baskets, and we got like an alcohol sponsor, so we were able to send popcorn. So we did gourmet for our higher sponsor. For our normal sponsors, we did like your microwavable, and I just decorated them real nice. put it in with candy and, you know, drinks. Everyone had the whiskey. Either they had little cans or they had the big bottles. And that was a nice surprise for them with information. We got Lush to sponsor and give us some samples. So we were able to do some self-care things because we're forgetting that being home. And like those kind of things really helped our sponsors feel much more excited and comfortable. And they were all surprised because we're used to having receptions, like our big nights. We have big receptions. So we weren't able to. So we kind of made it work with that and it worked out. So some people we deliver by hand and some people we just sent.
Did you send that to every attendee, or is it VIPs or filmmakers?
Every sponsor are young friends and up. So our young friends, and then all of our tier levels start at like $375 and they go up to $50,000 or so. And so we were able to kind of break it down and group the certain levels together. So we're celebrating our 40th anniversary this year. So it was like a birthday box and you get like a party favor, or you get like a gift box, or you get like all in, you know, a deluxe gift box or something like that. So it worked out really nicely, you know, with your sponsors being away from you and not being able to see you. If there is something you can do, we made like face masks and we got hand sanitizer. So they're able to wear those. And some of our people called like, hey, I've been wearing my mask around my building, or, you know, anything like that. So it was really good with that.
Awesome. Thanks for the input. That's a great idea. So with that, I will say that if you connected with anything that anyone else has said, I've really had some awesome conversations out of the Slack channel. I highly encourage you to DM and find everyone on there. Hopefully these are all marketing minded folks and ops folks, of course, that are active and techie enough to figure out the Zoom. So they're probably on Slack. So happy to connect with everyone as well. Thanks for coming today, and any other feedback, feel free to send it over.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Everyone.
Bye, guys.